this is Reverend Don Lewis, and welcome to another episode of Living the Wiccan Life. In this episode, I'm pleased to bring you our interview with Ellen Evert Hopman, noted Druidic author. I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode.
My name is Ellen Evert Hopman, and I'm a Druidess of the Order of the White Oak, which is a Celtic Reconstructionist Druid order. And I'm also an author of fiction and nonfiction books. I live in western Massachusetts in an oak forest. So yes, I'm a Druid and I live in an oak forest.
And you're here at Penn Fake on this weekend.
That's right.
And are you having a good time?
Oh, it's fabulous. It's non-stop fun and very, very nice people.
Yes, indeed. Which is your newest book?
The one that came out most recently is this one, Druids Herbal of Sacred Tree Medicine. My first book was called Tree Medicine, Tree Magic, and it's now out of print. It was a book on trees. This one is loosely based around the Ogham alphabet, which is the original Irish alphabet that before the Latin influence and the Christian church came to Ireland, the alphabet wasn't A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It was, oak, birch, ash. They used tree names for the letters. So this is an herbal. So it goes into great depth about herbal uses of the trees, poetic meanings of the trees in Iron Age culture and early medieval Ireland, some of the beliefs about the trees, and Druid magic involving trees. And then there's also detailed information about the four most important Druid or Celtic festivals, Bealtaine or Beltane, and Lunasa, Samhain, and Imbolc. There's large chapters on each of those festivals. So,
wonderful.
Yeah.
And you have a number of books as well, in addition to this newest one.
Mm-hmm. This is my first novel. This came out in February 2008. It was my first attempt at fiction. And the protagonist, it's called Priestess of the Forest, a Druid journey. The protagonist is a female Druid who's also a healer, but it has a lot of warriors, and it's based on Celtic research, but also on my own past life memories, I guess you could say. People always ask me if it's channeled. It is a guidebook for how to be a Druid, disguised as fiction, disguised as a novel. So I call it a bardic teaching tale, because all of the festivals are in here, and ideas for how to celebrate life passages. There's a lot of herbal information in here. And I don't really like the word channeling, but I'll just give you an example of something that happened, and this really did happen. I started writing the story about 9 years ago, so I've been working on this for a long time. And the characters very quickly took over, and they dictated the action, and it was their story. So they were showing me the rituals, they were showing me ceremonies, and one of the rituals that they showed me was a funeral. And in the book, the funeral involved the drinking of artemisia or mugwort tea. They would also use eagle wings to waft the artemisia smoke, and this was so that after a person died, the Druids would sit around and they would open their third eye, because that's what artemisia does. It opens up your psychic abilities, and they would have a vision of the deceased, and they would get a message, before the person completely left the earth. Around the time that this book came out, it came out February 2008. So February, March, and April of 2008, the news reports came out that archaeologists had found the first grave in Britain that they were certain belonged to a Druid. They had never found a Druid grave before. So when they opened the Druid grave, there was a container in the grave that had last held artemisia tea.
Oh my goodness.
So this was an interesting little, it happened, it's for real, you can look it up.
Very cool.
I feel like the characters were telling me things, And then, of course, this one, the Druids Herbal for the Sacred Earth here, has been around since the late 80s. This is probably my best-known book. It sells very well in Britain, for example. And this one has more to do with herbs in ritual, house blessings, child blessings, weddings, funerals, not trees but herbs, and also good solid healing nonfiction, healing applications. And then this one, being a pagan, is a book of interviews with pagan leaders like Z. Budapest, Starhawk, Margot Adler, Isaac Bonowitz, all the big ones. They're all in here, Oberon Zell, and
very cool.
Yeah.
How did you happen to come to this path? Just a simple question.
Yeah, no, not a simple question. I was born in Austria, in Salzburg, Austria. And my mother, who's still alive, is an artist. And when she was pregnant with me, and also when I was very young, they were uncovering Celtic graves in the Hallstatt, which is the area where Celtic culture first appeared in Europe. The Celts had been there following the cows around, but they didn't really have wealth until they got to Salzburg. Because that's where the salt mines were. Mm-hmm. So once they had wealth, they were able to commission jewelry and weapons and have, the first trappings of visible Celtic culture. So they were bringing these things up out of the graves in the Hallstatt, and my mother was so impressed. And when I was little, she used to always talk about the Celts with incredible reverence and respect. And that's all I remember, was how much the respect that she had. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought everybody grew up this way. This was normal, right? So it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I had an herbal practice in Philadelphia at the time, and one of my clients had met Isaac Bonowitz. And she just mentioned to me as I was taking her case that she had met a Druid. And as soon as I heard the word Druid, it was that aha moment. It's like, I knew, and this was before the internet. So you couldn't just, Google Druids and find a Druid. So I literally spent the next 2 years trying to find Druids, and then I eventually found ADF, and I was one of the original group of ADF members. I think there were about 30 members of ADF at the time that I joined. So that would have been 1984. It's been a while.
Very cool.
That's how it started.
What kind of changes have you seen in the time since then?
Well, there's a lot more of us out there. Yeah, you can find Druids in the phone book. You can find Druids on the internet. It wasn't like that in the old days. And I was lucky that I stumbled on ADF, because ADF under Isaac, and still was very scholarly, and I have sort of an intellectual kind of personality, so I fit right in, It's a much larger movement now, and there are very distinct strains of Druidism. There's British Druidry, English Druidry. There's Masonic Druidry, like the Ancient Order of Druids of America, or the Ancient Order of Druids. Basically, it's Masonic ritual with a Druid flavor, There are Celtic Druids like Keltria. There are Celtic Reconstructionist Druids like the Order of the White Oak, which I am now co-chief of the Order of the White Oak. I'm one of the co-founders and co-chief of White Oak. So we have a full spectrum, everything from sort of Wicca-inspired. They don't go any further back than, say, 1717, which is the year that the Masons were formed, and then they have a sort of a Masonic or Wiccan flavor. We have that kind of Druid. And then the Celtic Reconstructionist Druids try to go back to the Iron Age, and that's the flavor that I'm more involved with. And we try to, the oldest documents that we can find, which usually is no older than 7th century, because that's when they were first written down. That's what we really look for, is the old stuff. So,
very cool. If people would like to find out more about you and more about your books, where would you send them?
Well, the easiest thing to do is to just Google my name, Ellen Evert Hopman, and then my website will come right up. The Druid order that I'm co-chief of is White Oak, so it's whiteoakdruids.org, and that will take you to Druid portals and lots of Druid groups. And,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and you'll join us again for our next episode of Living the Wiccan Life. Until then, may you blessed be.